the basics of product management, the examination, the expectation, and everything that you would you would need to to be successful at your exams. Basically, we also shared the we also shared the cost, the benefits, and everything that you need to know. I'm sure that we also tried to see that everyone is registered and we're good to go. We're going to start with the module one. We're going to talk about the introduction of project management, what's a project, who's a project manager, what are the projects, what are the types of projects. Today we're going to try to see how to break down some of these technologies. We're going to be using the PMI curriculum, right? So please note there's also a Prince 2 curriculum. But for this class, we're going to be working majorly with the PMI curriculum. So that's what's going to guide us on our training. So basically, I'm going to start by asking a question. What does a project mean to you? So give me like 3 words, basically, that can describe a project to you. Who can just try? Just give me 3 words that describe what a project means to you. Who wants to try? 3 words. You can give me one. You can give it to. What does a project mean to you? Yeah, who wants to go? Who wants to go? What does a project mean to you? Organization. Okay, that's nice. Organization. Thank you, Boogie. Alex, you want to share? What does a project mean to you? Just 3 words I can describe it. Okay, so I'm going to try to define a project using the PMI curriculum. Before now, it was something you do that gives you a value, a result at the end. So before now, in the 7th edition, like I said, I was going to be combining them. In this 5th, 6th, 7th edition, a project was a temporary endeavor that you undertake that gives you a unique outcome, a unique result, right? And that is what it was before. That was the definition before now. However, now a project, so they've shifted the focus of project to value. Please take note of this, because it's part of the difference. Project is now a temporary initiative. It's not like it's now; it is actually what it has always been. But the emphasis now is that it is an initiative in a unique context, undertaking to create value. So when we're talking about a project, it is something that you undertake that at the end of the day, you are looking forward to creating value. You're looking forward to establishing value at the end of the day. So that is what a project is. And please note this, there are key characteristics of a project. Now, the first one is, it's not even here, but the first one is that it is temporary. What does that mean? It means that a project must have a start date and an end date. It is temporary. Anything that runs forever is no longer a project, right? So a project's the first characteristic is that it is temporary, meaning that it has a defined start and end date, right? It is also specific with goals, right? It is specific. You know exactly what you want to do. It has a scope, right? And you can measure your goals. You can know when this thing is supposed to end as we move. So another thing is it has a unique outcome or deliverable. You have your expectations at the end of the day that this is what you're supposed to achieve. So it has a unique outcome, right? Which is very much measurable, right? So, and then of course, another important characteristic of project is that the resources are always limited. You cannot always have a project that you have abundance of income. I know that some of us that have managed a couple of projects will always tell you that we are always tied, we're always bound by limitation of the income. So the resources are almost always all the time not enough for the project, right? So they're always limited, right? And so, like I explained, projects are temporary. And how do you know when a project has ended? Number one, project ends when objectives are met. Please note this: when objectives are met. Please let's can write can note some of these things. I'm still going to share the slides anyways. But the project end when objectives are met. That means what you want to do, what you want to achieve at the end of the day, you've achieved it. Number two, when objectives cannot or will not be met. I'm going to give you a typical example. There's a project in Port Harcourt that was started by the governor of the state. That was in close to 16 years now, right? That's Governor Metri at that time. He wanted to build a monorail project that is going to run from my one to I think it's I don't know, I can't even remember those places now. But it was supposed to run from there down to I think it's oil mill or something like that, oil mill market. Now I don't know who scoped the project or what happened, but basically that rail line was supposed to cut um part of that it was they already started, but it was supposed to cut off the hotel presidential for those of us that know Port Harcourt very well. Hotel presidential is like the Sheraton of Lagos or Radisson Blu of Lagos in Port Harcourt. It's supposed to eat through it, like they are going to demolish a part of it and then keep going and all that. Right. So they started the project, and of course, there will be transition. The governor left, a new governor came. That's Governor Yenson Wike, and the Koren in that space, which I happen to be a part of, went to do an assessment. The governor didn't want to continue the project. The new governor, because he felt it was not a viable project at that time, right? But then he even said, okay, let's try. When Koren went to evaluate, they wanted to even say, let's destroy what has already been built because it's already occupying space so that they can, use it for some other thing. But they found out that that space, if you try to, one of those pillars cost like 1 billion. If you try to destroy the pillars, it's going to have a great impact on the environment because you're not just going to be able to demolish it with maybe hammer. You're going to need a machine that's going to vibrate it. When that vibration happens and pulling down happens, it's going to affect the environment, which is going to really, really cause an impact that might even affect for a very long period of time. So at the moment, they can't complete the project. They can't also demolish the project, unfortunately. Right. So the objectives cannot be met and it will not be met. So at that point, you can say that project ended. Another reason is when funds are depleted, you don't have money again, right? Or you no longer the need no longer exists, right? A project can also end when the need to no longer exists. If somebody had a vision of building maybe a mobile application that is supposed to make payment instant, that need is no longer existing because we have fintechs that have done it 5, 10 times. So the resources are no longer available can also be a reason why a project. So in this case, it's not necessarily funds that we call resources, maybe human resources as well. Maybe there's an expatriate that is supposed to handle this, and for some reason he's no longer or she's no longer available. That can also cause the project to be terminated. And then legalities or convenience. People can just say, I'm not doing again, right? So it just happened, and that can also lead to the end of a project. And typical examples of real life projects could be building, construction, designing and constructing a residential or a commercial building from ground up. Software development can also be a project. Building a new mobile application with big features and user experience. Planning an event can also be a project that one might want to undertake, right? So event planning can also be a project. Organizing conferences, product launches, or corporate gatherings with defined timelines, of course. And it goes on and on and on. But high point of projects is that it is driving change. You're moving from your current state where you are, you're moving whatever you're doing to the future state, and in between that thing you're doing, there are activities in between. So we're going to come back to these activities, but please take note. You're moving from the current state, from a dry land, an empty space where there's nothing, and you're trying to build an edifice on it. You're trying to, from a document that had no, that's nothing, or from a problem you're seeing in your environment, you're trying to build an application or build a solution that can help you solve that problem in the long run. So you're moving something from the current state to a future state. And some of these projects would be we can have projects from maybe a new technology that came in, example, PAPS. projects are now springing in from that. Perhaps different businesses want to plug in, different banks want to plug in, so that they can, you know, just harmonize the Pan African payment system that is, coming on board, and they are not left out. Even this open banking too is a new technology, is a new system that is coming up, that could come about some projects around it, right? Competitive forces can lead to projects. When you see that your competitor is doing something, you might want to, plug in so that you're not left behind, or your business is not left behind. Material issues, political changes can also lead to projects. Market demand as well, economic changes, customer request. The customer request can lead to a project. The customer wanted us to build a system for them that allows them to collect uniquely as a state, right? And it's a state, so it's big, right? And it's something that's going to give the financial institution where I work a lot of money. So yes, we picked up the project because of the customer. So stakeholder demands as well, legal requirements can also lead to projects. And then business process improvements, trying to ensure that customers have the best experience using your system, using your platform, using your facility. Strategic opportunity or business need, social need, environmental considerations, different things can lead to different projects. In fact, there's a project we're working on now because CBN said that liveliness check will be compulsory for tier one. They said if you move from one app to the other, your balance should be, your limit should be 20,000. It shouldn't be more than 20,000. And these are requirements that are coming in that have necessitated projects in that line. So generally, project management then is the application of knowledge and skills, tools and techniques to project activities to meet or exceed the intended value. So there's a value that you want to achieve at the end of the day. The application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet or exceed that intended value is what project management is all about, right? Meeting or exceeding value in project management does not mean to endorse or accept gold plates, scope creep. No, but it means to emphasize a value-driven decision-making process, helping to ensure that the final project outcome satisfies the stakeholders. What does scope creep mean? Or what? Let me try to explain this a little more. We're not saying that when you try to exceed or meet their value, it means that, or meet their demands, it means that they can just bring in anything at any point of the project and you just pick it up like that. No, that's not what it's saying. What it's saying is that um that you want to make sure that stakeholders are satisfied. However, scope creeping means we have agreed to do this, and for reasons best known to them, maybe along the way, they now decide that no, we want to add A or add B or add C or add D. That's scope creeping. Um, our system does not say that you should scope creep all the time. No, adding or exceeding the value, that's not what it means. It only means that you want to be able to ensure that your stakeholders are satisfied at every point in time as you do the project. You want to make sure that the plan, what was planned for, um, is achieved at the end of the day, and nobody is feeling like, yeah. So that's basically what this is talking about. Okay, so I'm going to now say that there's a relationship between projects, programs, portfolio, as the case may be. There's a relationship between all three of them: project, programs, and portfolio. And they are they are all also very key to the strategy of the organization, right? Project, program, portfolio, they are key to the strategy of the organization that you're working with. So we have a sample. So we have an organizational strategy, like basically what the organization wants to achieve, and then we have portfolio, which is a more like a combination of different programs that will make up that strategy. And then under each of those programs, can then have projects. Those projects could overlap. Those projects could, and then under the projects, you have stakeholders, shared resources to ensure that we achieve the organization, the strategy of the organization that we are trying to work with. So let's try to define a project, a program. Now we've talked about project. A program is just basically a group of interrelated projects, right? A group of interrelated projects and program activities that are managed in a coordinated manner to obtain benefits. That if you wanted to do it with just one project, you will not be able to do it. Right? So it's basically a group of projects that are managed in a coordinated manner to obtain the benefits that are not available from managing them individually. Right? And these interrelated activities can, serve program components to enable the program to deliver the highest value, and may also include other subsidiary programs as the case may be. Then portfolio. So program is a collection of related projects. A program is now a portfolio rather is now a collection of programs, projects, and operations managed as a group to maximize overall value delivery and achieve strategic objectives, right? Meet mandatory obligations or generate income streams. So related activities may include subsidiary portfolios and operations. So that portfolio management basically is defined as a centralized management of one or two or more portfolios to achieve a strategic objective. What is this basically trying to tell you? In a portfolio space, you have programs, you have some projects in between, and operations, right? They're running concurrently because you're trying to achieve the strategic vision of your organization. You're trying to meet the obligation, the mandatory obligation. You're trying to generate income. Basically, what the company requires, you're trying to make it happen, right? With a combination of different programs and different projects, and of course operations in between to help you achieve that. So this diagram just shows you a picture of what I was talking about. So for a portfolio, I mentioned that there could be sub portfolios, there could be projects, there could be programs that make up that. For programs, you can have sub programs, projects, and operations that make up a program, and then um, for sub portfolio, you have projects and programs, and then at the end of all of them, for you always have projects that drive each of them, right? So we have the organization project management. So every organization has a team that helps to manage this portfolio program and project framework. So OPM basically is defined as a framework, right? OPM is defined as a framework in which your portfolio, your program, and project management are integrated with organizational enablers in order to achieve strategic um, objectives of the business. So when you combine the projects, the portfolios, the programs within an organization so that you can achieve the strategic objectives of what you're doing. That is what an OPM, organizational project management, looks like. So you want to achieve the strategic business objectives of the company. You have an organization project management team that combines portfolio programs and projects to ensure that the objectives are, are met. So again, I've mentioned operations a couple of times. I felt it necessary to add this to the slide so that you can understand when we say projects, and then we say operations. What is the difference, right? I told you projects have, according to PMI, it has start date and end date. Not even according to PMI standard definition, right? That start date and it has end date, right? For a project. Now, operation, the difference is that operation is ongoing and repetitive work. That anything that you keep doing every day, that becomes operation. That is no longer project, right? So buying fuel, turning on generator, making sure that the office is swept, and those things are operational, right? Building the place and then launching it, handing over, that's project, right? So operations are ongoing and repetitive. So you keep buying fuel maybe every weekend or every month, depending on how you run, or every day. You keep um, adding and taking out inventory, LIFO, FIFO, depending on what you operate in your warehouse. Those ones are operational, right? But setting up the warehouse, that's a project, right? And then operations involve work that is continuous without an end date, often repetitive. So operation management is concerned with ongoing production of goods and or services. So that's what operation is, ongoing things that happen every day. Operations in tech, I've talked about operations in tech for us. Basically, I manage a tech product at the moment. So operations look like a customer tried to send money, but the money didn't reflect. Please help us check. Operations look like um, I'm trying to create the customer, I'm trying to call this endpoint, and this endpoint is failing. Can you assist? So we check. Okay, no, you're one of the fields. You're not calling, so your API key is not properly put in place, or you're not even using the right URL, something like that. But those things occur every time, and we have to keep reaching out to the customers and developers to see that they have a seamless process, right? So that's operations, right? But the project is building the application, launching it, and it's out there. Project is, that's what the project is, and that's the difference. So generally, in a nutshell, projects are temporary in nature and have a defined start and end date. Why operations are ongoing and repetitive, right? Projects produce a unique product, service, or result, right? While operations they involve continuous without an end date, just keep doing it, right? And then projects are completed when the goals and objectives have been met and signed off by stakeholders, basically. But then operations, you often repeat the same process and tasks every day and have the same result. There's no major change, just similar results you get at every point in time. And I'm going to define some terms in the PM book guide. There's a project management book of knowledge. I'm going to share that project management book of knowledge today alongside the recordings of the last class and this class, right? So the PM book defines project life cycle, project phase, project. These are key components of a project, right? Project management processes, project management process groups, project management knowledge areas. I'm going to talk about these are going to form the fundamentals of every other thing we're going to be talking about. So you will notice that we're going to talk about the processes, the process groups, the knowledge areas. These are the key things that we're going to be talking about right to the end of the class. So you might want to take note of this, right? So what is a project life cycle? Basically, just talks about a series of phases that the project passes through from its start date to end date. So just phases that the project will be passing through. It's different for different kinds of project, right? Um, so the life cycle talks about the different phases. So what are the phases, right? It's a collection of logically related project activities that culminates in the completion of one or more deliverable. Let me explain it practically. So if you're doing a building project, example, um, a phase could be civil works, right? Civil works basically means maybe you can even start the phase by clearing the land, depending on the kind of project you're doing, right? Or demolition or breaking up some parts of the, which is still part of civil work anyway, right? Clear the land. If it's a renovation, you break some parts, clean up. Civil works, clean the walls, make sure everything is fine, and then buy the material, electrical. That's one that could be one phase, civil work. Electrical is could be another phase. You put your electrical fittings, your different parts of the electrical space, right? That could be another phase. Another phase could then be decorations. Maybe when you're finished, your murals on the walls, painting, depending on what the nature of the project you want to do. And another phase could be um, launch, right? Which is okay when you want to finally hand over the project to who's going to do it. But basically, the the phase is basically just a related activity. So civil, you have getting the laborer, cement, blah blah blah, and everything you're going to need, sand, and to make sure that the walls, everything is fine. Handled by a civil engineer, you have an electrical engineer that handles the electrical part, and then you now have maybe an exterior person that coordinates almost all of them, right? And then you manage so basically, that's what the project is logically related project activities that accumulate into the completion of one or more of these deliverables. Then we have a gate, right? So at the end of each phase, you try to sit back and then check, okay, hope we are doing well before we proceed to the next one. So that's what a phase gate is. A phase gate is a review at the end of a phase in which a decision is then made to continue to the next phase or to continue with modification or to end the program. So let me use a tech example this time to explain what this means. You're building an application and I'm currently building one. We're currently in the development phase. We've run a couple of sprints, but we are thinking of we're looking towards pushing out the MVP to pilot. So we're basically, when you push it to pilot, for example, that's a phase. That's a phase now, and then you're checking it, and maybe the market has moved. Right? You might decide that okay, we're not moving ahead. Let's just kill it. Or maybe the company has decided to do something else. You can just decide to kill it, right? Or you can decide to okay, let us in this phase, let's modify it, let's add more features. So let's maybe change it. Example, we're looking at let's change the UI a bit, let's make it more exciting, right? So that's an example, that's something you can do at that phase. Because okay, we share the APK to different brands. Let's so we are moving forward with modification, right? That's a phase gate. That's what the phase gate. Then project management processing, basically a systematic series of activities directed towards causing an end result where one or more inputs to be acted upon create one to create one or more output. Basically, the project management processes we're just talking about series of activities directed towards causing an end result. So add this output comes up. So different activities that you do, right, towards trying to create a result, right? That's what the processes look like. So we then have process groups. So where we now break it down into um, maybe initiation where you're starting, and then you go into planning, and then you go into execution, and then monitor. Those are the process groups. So what about process groups? Basically, logically grouping of project management input tools and techniques and output, right? Grouping them. So we have 5 process groups. I think you will hear this for the rest of the class. I've also done an interview in project management where this question was asked, right? So you can't forget it. That's what I'm just trying to say. So you need to know it. Initiation as the first process group. We have planning. Then we then have execution. So initiation means basically, okay, should you do this? You're trying to ask your stakeholders, gather all the information. Are we doing this or not? Try to get that alignment. When you said, okay, this is what we want to do. This is the vision of what we want to achieve. You then move to planning, where okay, what are the materials we need, budget, everything, plan how much are we going to spend, and who are the resources, what quality of materials are we getting, different things. So that's what the knowledge area will tell you about basically when we get to knowledge area. So then planning, then you now go into execution from the plan. Like you've gotten your program and your plan out, you've gotten your work breakdown structure and everything, and then you start executing. And you go to that's the third phase. You execute. Then in your process of executing basically just means doing what you have planned to do, right? And then after you during your execution, there's what is called monitoring and control, which is the fourth phase. Monitoring and control is you're checking that what you have planned is what is actually being done. So yes, even in your finance, you're checking budget versus actual, you're monitoring it, the quality as well, the materials you say you're going to buy. Truth is that things might change, right? Maybe by the time you go to the market, the chair that you had in your architectural design is no longer available. Or by the time you start developing, maybe you find out that it's very difficult to get resources that are very good at Flutter, but you have maybe your developers are fantastic to React, example. Things might change, but you're making sure that you're not going too overboard. You're monitoring and you're controlling. And then at the end of the day, after you've executed, ensuring everything is fine, you now go to the last phase, which is important, which is the closing phase, to ensuring that your program must have a start and end date. So closing phase is basically where you then end the process. So that's the project management process. And then finally, the project management knowledge areas, basically defined as um, identified areas in project management that you need to know, defined by its knowledge requirements and described in terms of its component practices, input output tools, and techniques. I'm going to explain then. We have knowledge areas like resources, we have resource management, we have personnel management, we have cost management, um, we have scope management so that you don't go out of school. We have quality management, and so we have like 8 of them, right? But I think the new PMP, try to reduce them a little bit. Basically, talking about knowledge areas, things you need to know, the input, the outputs, the different things in that area that you need to know so that you're able to be effective while you're doing that. So basically, we talked about the project life cycle, series and phases, which we defined as series of phases that the project passes through from its start to its completion, basically providing a framework for managing the project. So it could be predictive and it could also be adaptive. You're going to hear these words over and over again. Predictive basically just means that a life cycle that is pretty much known, acceptable, is something that the real world there is not susceptible to change. It's not like changes can't happen, but it is not easily. It's not something that happens easily. So in predictive, you're looking at a system where um, this thing is known. Example, in predictive project lifecycle could be like a building project. Basically, everybody has an idea that if you want to build a standard practice to start with a foundation, foundation type depends on the location, where you're building, and then after you finish the foundation, and then you then start putting your blocks after TPC, and then you then go to lintel, and then start taking of roofing and all that. So it's a system that it's already defined. So it's predictive. You can predict it. While adaptive is such that um you don't have all the answers when you're starting. You just start. Typical example is usually in software development, where you try to just prioritize, put out your backlogs, and then you start. Right, you start with your sprint, and then move your product backlog to sprint backlog, and then you develop. When you finish that one, you go and check out which of them should I prioritize again. What is the market saying, and then you pick it up from there. So, so it could be predictive or adaptive, right? So within the project life cycle, there could be generally one or more phases in between associated with the development of the product or the service or the result. And these are called the development, life cycles. So the development life cycles, like I also said, can be predictive, can be iterative, can be incremental, adaptive, or a hybrid model. Let me try to see. I'm going to explain this, but I know there's still more on the slides. So when we say predictive, I think I've explained that it's something you already have a sequence, on how you can do it. It's something that people know. It's something that there's a pattern, already established pattern. Now, iterative means that it is so you finish a cycle of things, achieve a result, repeat the cycle again, achieve a result, repeat the cycle again, achieve a result. What does that mean? Is majorly practiced in the software space. So um my work, what I do today is basically I look at what the market is saying and I come up with a backlog, right? List of things that we need to achieve, and then come up with product documents, come up with whatever, and get it signed basically. Now, when they pick items from the product backlog to the sprint backlog, they will do stand up, develop it, test it, and deploy, right? Develop, test, deploy, develop, test. So when they deploy, you have one feature out, right? So that's process of doing that stand up, developing, testing, deployment. That's one iteration. At the end of that deployment, you have a new feature which we call an increment. So that's where incremental comes in. So it is iterative and incremental. So iteration means you're doing a circle of thing that will give you an output. You repeat it again when you want to do another one. Repeat it again. So, example, you're building a mobile application, and one of the features of that mobile application is that maybe you should be able to, of course, create an account for people. So that's one feature. Maybe you should be able to get a card when you receive assign card, activate card, block card, those card management systems, right? Maybe you should also be able to maybe do loans, maybe depending on what the business wants to achieve. Let me just use those three as an example. So you run an illustration. The first one is account opening. So onboarding, that's what's generally called. So that sprint, they're going to put out the forms and everything, connect to the database, the different reports and all that. So you run that sprint, you test the onboarding, it's fine, that comes out. You then do another one, iteration for let's say card. So there's a module called card, feature called card. They will do, they develop it, they test, and it comes out. And then that's another increment. And then you can decide to put loads, you can decide to put any other things were runs in that sense. Then when we talk about hybrid, is now a combination of, you know, basically majorly predictive and adaptive systems, basically. So that's basically um, how it works, right? I'm going to be skipping some of these things. You can, this is from the sixth edition. You can take a look at them. But basically, when we talk about life cycle, the product life cycle may be sequential, iterative, or overlapping. This is important. Please take notes. Take notes. Take notes. Take notes. Because we're going to talk about sequencing in one of our courses. So this is just an introduction, like I said. So sequential relationship is one must finish before the next phase can start. Please take note. One must finish before the next phase can start. A typical example is the building, like I explained. Sequential relationship must finish the foundation before you move up, and then you must finish the walls and then put the lintel before you can put it. So sequential relationship. Overlapping relationship is one phase starts before the prior phase completes. So you are doing something, um, you may not necessarily need to finish. So let's say you've done your lintel. In fact, while you're doing your lintel and building, you can be buying things. So you're still, you can run those two. They are overlapping. You can be buying maybe fridge, AC, all those things. There are things that can overlap, right? And then iterative relationship is basically work for subsequent phases are planned as the work of the previous phase is being performed, like I explained. If you're building a mobile application, onboarding, while you are finished planning onboarding, they are building it. So let me give you a life example. I'm working towards the new CBN rule, which says we should liveness check is compulsory for all tier one customers. So um, they are currently building bulk APIs. That's what the sprint. That's the ongoing sprint now. While they are building the bulk APIs, we are gathering requirements, getting all the necessary approvals, preparing for the next one. So the next sprint is supposed to start middle of this month. Is being worked on while this is happening. So work for previous subsequent phase are planned as the work of the previous phase is performed. So the next phase that they are getting to, we're already working for working at. So we run an iterative system. So that's those are kinds of relationships. So basically, just to explain it a little bit more, the predictive life cycle requires extensive planning. Why? Because like I said, change is something that is not a fantastic, it's not a friend in this area, right? So you need to plan extensively so that you don't even need to bring in that change, right? Because change has to pass through a change management board or a change control board, depending on what the nomenclature applies in where you work, which is going to take. So it is very, very extensive. The planning is extensive. The scope, time, cost is set early in the project early. Um, Change is managed carefully, like I explained, and then there's a formal control, formal reporting system. Iterative scope is also determined early, time and cost and design are planned progressively. So, like I explained, as we're doing this um, trying to get the liveness check done. A designer is designing it. It's not it was not ready since it's getting ready now. Right. So time, cost, and designs are planned progressively, iterations developed through repeated cycles, like I explained, and each cycle adds a functionality to the project. So incrementals, like I explained, a series of iterations, right? So as you iterate, incrementals are coming, your project, your app is looking good and you have more features, right? Functionalities are added after each iteration, and then it is completed after the final iteration. By the time you're done with all the iterations, you then have the final increment. Then we have the adaptive agile, which actually talks about both iterative and incremental. So we have multiple iterations, increased functionality, requirements are set by iteration, and of course, whenever you hear agile or adaptivity, basically talks about um, looking forward to change. That is accept change. So hybrid, like I said, is a combination of both predictive and adaptive. Um, Predictive means well known. You something like I explained, you know it. People you know what's going to happen. It's not like something that it's predictive. You have an idea. It's well known. The requirements are detailed and fixed, while adaptive basically talks about rapid change and continuous, based on continuous feedback from customer. The hybrid system is also flexible because it tries to combine both. Now we are building hybrid build, using hybrid to build. Uh, but anyway, yeah, you can actually use the hybrid system in civil constructions where you can change. There are some things that can change. You're not able to change the maybe it's supposed to be like a 70-story building. You might not be able to change the story building, but might be able to change the internals when you start, right? So yeah, so we've explained what the project phase is: a collection of logically related activities that culminates in the completion of one or more deliverables. We also talked about the phase gate held at the end of each phase to tell you whether we should continue, we should go back, or we should chill. Um, then Kickoff meeting. When you want to start a project, so you've gotten your charter signed, everybody is aligned. It's the first meeting you will do with all your um, so let me use which one should I use now? Let me use my current role. So I'm trying to build an application, right? I gather the developers, front end, back end, QA, everybody, the product associates and all that. And we decide and say, okay, we are trying to do um, something. We want to build an app. I'm going to explain I'm going to explain what I want to do in details. Make sure that I communicate the idea, the objective of the project, so that and everybody will ask questions. Right? I think I got this recently in one interview I did. Everybody will ask questions and say, "Okay, this is what I want to do. Are they clear?" Everybody will be clear. You ask you everybody. This you can even draw it. Usually preferable if physical meeting. Draw it on the board. This is what we're trying to achieve. The developers will speak to themselves in their language. Okay, this is where we're going to put the repo. We're going to write this here, write that there, and at the end of the day, everybody's aligned. And then that's the kickoff meeting. We can then go ahead to start the project. I've already mentioned the definition of project management processes. The project lifecycle is managed by executing a series of project management activities known as the, the processes. And then we talked about the process groups, which we talked about logically grouping of project management processes to achieve specific project activities. So like I mentioned, I said you're going to be hearing this thing over and over and over again. The process groups are five, and they still maintained it even in the new curriculum, right? Initiation process group, initiation planning, monitoring and control, execution, and closing. These are the five process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing. I explained that initiation is where do you want to do this? Anyway, we're going to break it down again. But do you want to do this? Do we have approval to do this and all that? When we have approval, we have a clear vision of what we want to achieve. We move into planning. How much are we going to spend? You plan budget, you plan resources. What are we going to need? What quality of materials are we going to be using for this project? And then you plan extensively. What time? Of course, you're going to plan what to be involved. What is the scope of what we're going to do? They can tell you to build a house, a building for Sterling, for example, or headquarters of a branch, a company. So the planning could be where is it going to be located, how much are we going to looking at spending, extensive planning basically, and then execution. Execution just basically talks about what you've planned, putting it into action. Again, monitoring and control happens during execution, where you try to ensure that what you have planned, right, as you're executing, you're working, it's working in tandem. Basically, you're not overspending, you're not buying less quality than you've planned. You're not, you see, everything is basically as planned. That's what we're trying to do, right? While we understand that there might be variations, you are controlling it and you're monitoring to ensure that the outcome is what it's been envisaged. And then finally, you close, basically ending the whole project life cycle, which is very, very important, which is very, very, very key, which is very, very, very important. So, like I explained, the initiation phase or the initiation and planning talks about a new project. Maybe there's a new project you want to do, or you want to begin a new phase, right? or maybe you have to reevaluate. Basically, trying to reevaluate and problem, or you probably have so many problems that you want to reevaluate the business need. Basically, those are the things you look at when you're trying to initiate. And then, if that is good to go, then you can then, after you finish initiating, then you can then start planning. And that planning talks about necessities, ongoing needs, monitoring. What are we looking at? What are the additional things we're adding? These are the things that enters. What's the basically reason for entering in a project, right? And then executing, like I said, taking that thing you've planned, putting it into action, and then closing basically means project is complete, project is terminated. Like I said, project can end when you're no longer interested, as the case may be. Then you're monitoring, you're making sure that everything that you've planned, you are working in that line. You're not overshooting, you're not undershooting, you're making sure that you're good to go. Then I also mentioned knowledge areas. Again, I'm bringing back all these things. Like I said, is high point is that's what we're going to be discussing for most part of the project. So knowledge area, like I explained, is an identified area in project management defined by its knowledge requirements and described in terms of its component processes. So practices, inputs, output, tools, and techniques. We're going to talk about the knowledge areas, as we proceed. So these are the knowledge areas, right? We have integration management, we have scope management, we have schedule management, we talks about time, right? We have cost management, we talks about finance. That's the new word now in the new um, um, 8th edition, right? It's now called finance generally. We have quality management, we talked about um, quality management talks about the product doing what you said it would do. That's what quality is, right? So if I say this thing is going to last 10 years, it lasts 10 years. That's the quality. That's the quality product, right? If I say this thing is going to, you know, be strong, that's maybe it's going to stay for 7 years. It's going to stay for 7 years. So quality management, resource management, which could also include human resource. Do we need expatriates? You need that resource management. Communication management. This is very important. How do we communicate? Right? Please take note. I miss this. It's very important. How do you communicate? Do we do meetings every week? Do we send emails? Do we, you know, um, depending on communication management, the meeting should it be virtual? Should it be physical? Should it be maybe just WhatsApp or X or Teams or Meet or Skype, depending on the time or Skype, and all that. Then risk management as well. What are the things that could go wrong? How do we plan to mitigate it? How do we plan to accept it? How do we plan to push it out? Right? Risk management. Then procurement management. How do we purchase goods, purchase raw materials, purchase things that we're going to need for this project, right? You have to study it. I remember I was working in when I was working in in the manufacturing industry. We usually buy our raw materials from Italy, and at some point of course, there's a meeting we do every week to check our inventory level, especially raw material. So we had raw material warehouse and finished goods warehouse. So especially raw materials because it was more like a franchise where you buy the license of a company to operate it only in Nigeria. So you're the sole distributor. So you have to produce or manufacture in line with the specifications of the company you're dealing with. That was when I was working with CAP PLC. We had to plan for the procurement, meaning that when our inventory is on this level, we start making orders, right? Preparing all the incoterms that will be needed to bring the product to the country, right? So you have to plan procurement management, and then we also have stakeholder management. Stakeholders can be internal, stakeholders can be external, stakeholders can be, so you need to plan how to also manage them. Like I said, so these are the process groups and the different things you need to know about them during initiation, during planning, executing, monitoring and control, and then closing. You can take a look at them later. And then I've also talked about the knowledge areas and the process groups. So how do they interact? How do they interrelate? Right. So this is something you can also look at. So but take note of them: integration management, scope management, schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource management, communication, risk management, procurement management, stakeholder management. And then the process groups, we have initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing, right? Like I explained, who is a stakeholder in this case? Stakeholder basically is just anybody or an individual or group or an organization. Now take note that may affect, be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by decision, activities, or outcome of a project. If you're doing a project in, let's say, a place, let's say you're handling and so there was a time we did a project in when I had a project with Shell at some point. So what we're doing was that we were trying to evaluate then gas was coming. That's when LNG had a decade of gas vision, right? So gas was now becoming a thing. Before now, it just fled. It was now becoming a thing, and the project was that we should evaluate a field. They've already um, used that field to produce oil before now, but they didn't really check the gas reserves, to see whether it was viable or not. So the project was that we should go and evaluate that field and check if it's viable for them. And so we had a team. I was a product economist and project economist, and then also the production technologist in that project. So stakeholders in that case could include the community people, the chiefs. They're not necessarily going to be using the funds. I mean, they're stakeholders, right? And then the project, the shell itself, the partners we worked with, and then these are people that, and then government, right? So the DPR that will be coming, as at that time was DPR. I think now is something else, right? Right. So that will be coming to evaluate, making sure that whatever you're doing was right. So, like I said, it could be internal, it could be external, they could be involved, they could be impacted, they could be interested. These are your stakeholders, right? Whether they are like like DPRO is interested, and they might not necessarily be impacted, but they're interested. Um, People that are actually doing the project, they are involved, and then the community can be impacted by what you're doing. So they are so this then forms some constraint, which we call project constraint. Basically, trying to that restrict or dictate the actions of the project team, right? Um, these constraints could be scope, it could be time, it could be cost, it could be quality, it could be risk. I did an interview where I was asked. Um, I'm going to ask at the end of this class, right? I don't want to break the recording, but basically, I'm asking you that you have a. I think it was even an exam. I can't even remember. You are doing a project, and your line manager or your sponsor is saying that you should deliver this thing in. So maybe initially when you scoped it, you were supposed to deliver it in 5 days or 1 month. Let's say 1 month, and then after a while, your or let's say 1 year, you're supposed to deliver it in 1 year. And then after a while, your sponsor said, no, deliver this in 3 months. I'm going to ask you a question. So start thinking about at the end of the how do you achieve this? What do you do? Right. So this is now a constraint, right? So what do you do? So we're going to talk about it, but in our so we are constrained by bricks, you're constrained by scope, by schedule, time. Like, when would this be delivered? Cost, how much is available can be a constraint, right? Quality, how close to the outcome. Like I explained what quality is. What you said is going to happen, is it going to happen? That's what quality is talking about. The outcome of what you said you would do. Does it match expectation? That's what quality talks about. And then who and what is required to do the work? Resources. That could be a constraint. I was listening to the platform, one of the speakers yesterday, was it yesterday, 1st of May, right? On the platform was saying that they have over how many vacancies. That should be money point speaker, and there's no resource that they couldn't hire anybody. So that's a resource constraint, right? Because he's competing with the global market, and the people that they're seeing cannot fit for the roles, right? So that could be a constraint. And then risks, what can go wrong and what can be done about it. Those are some constraints that you might have, right? So again, in project management, as you do your project, like I am, generally doing an introduction to keywords, there is data and information management. So as you keep moving through your project, you'll be collecting data both from the planning, even from the initiation phase, planning, as you monitor and as you execute, as you monitor, as you close, you're collecting data, you're analyzing data, and you can also transform that data to be something amazing. In this generation where data is very, very important, it is key, it is necessary, it is very, very important. Let me give you an example of an important thing data can help you do. So in my project or in the product I manage at the moment, we of course they as customers complain and log complaints or issues, you will then see a pattern. If you're of course you have to looking at it and understanding, you see a pattern, and from that pattern you're able to then say, okay, this is a recurring customer issue. And we build a process around it? Can we automate this solution so that it becomes easier for customers to move and improve. So you collect data, you then analyze those data and you transform them, right? And then it's very important. It's very, very important because you need this data. You need it because it will help you even in the project you're doing and also in the future projects. I think data is everything now. That project I was telling you about that we handled for Shell at the time, USPDC at the time. Um, they just gave us an already existing data they've already collected. So at the time they developed the field for oil. Of course, for you to drill an oil well, you have to do um, seismic. Um, you have to collect seismic data. Basically, what they do is they clear the land, and then the geologists will have they will they will they will vibrate the ground. They will send sound waves to the ground. Basically, either using a dynamite or the newer technologies now that does not affect the environment. That's why they chase people out. And then when they send those sound waves to the ground, to then bounce off sending waves, right? Different types of waves, rally waves, different types of waves. So that image, so you capture it. Then from that image, you're going to get the subsurface view of the environment where you are, right? So they take that and they hit that sound in different places and then get that view. They get that view, they are now able to read the subsurface. And then from that subsurface reviews, they are now able to, track how wide. So they are looking for 5 things: traps, seals, all that. Let me not bother you with so many petroleum dragons. So basically, at the end of the day, we'll be able to locate that, okay, there's likely oil in this place because I've been able to find these 5 things from the data I've collected. And when they are able to define that, okay, or gas will likely be in this area, they now drill what we call the wildcat well. The wildcat well is just a well to check. So then drill. So when you drill that wildcat well, you just basically want to check whether there's oil in that place. So while you're drilling, you're logging. There's what it's called logging. Logging is also another way of collecting data. So while you're drilling, you're putting in some measurement tools to read now you can actually now get real data, right? So you call them logs. So you can measure it, you check different drills until you're able to reach that place where this wave shows you that, okay, there's oil, and then you can put your tubings and see. When you drill it, you then it's okay, you now see whether there's oil, really whether there's oil or there's gas. So you can't drill without any data because drilling is quite expensive. So that first seismic data you collect helps you to know, okay, there's something here, we can try it, and then you now bring your guys to come and drink. So data is important everywhere. Now, another important thing that I got from that project is, so I was trying to design the well, right? So of course when you drill your wildcat well, you now drill development wells, right? That will actually bring that will bring the oil. So when you drill here, you now get more information about that place, and then now know where the oil is, and then drill your development wells to bring out the oil. Now I was not thinking of, okay, what well completion will I use? Well completion just talks about how you want to finish the well. So basically, do you want to put tubings or do you want to leave it like that so that you can get more oil, as the case may be? Now, what did I use to know, okay, how do I do it? Right? What did I do? So I tried to simulate it. There's a software called Prosper that you can use to simulate some of these things. When I tried it, I discovered that if I put tubings and I evaporate it, the flow will not be much. and of course, with what you're doing, you're trying to you're trying to bring flow. You're trying to get more oil, right? The flow won't be much, right? It won't give us a lot. So this case now is gas. The standard cubic feet of gas won't be much because the passage will be small. So I also thought of, okay, let me leave it open. Let me not put too big so that it can contain. But then when you leave it open, the problem is now that you can collect sand and other things upwards as it's coming up. So I was now thinking, okay, what can I do? Because my simulations were not, it was giving me this and that. So what did I do? I went to check historical data. They've already drilled the well that was nearby, right? So what did I just do? I just matched it. I checked, okay, what completion did they use? What was the altitude? Did it do well? I checked the sand system. I drew the S column, it was good. So I said, okay, that means if I leave it open, I will be fine. So I left us an open well, and the outcome was fantastic. So that was because somebody did well and kept data that we could then finally then subsequently to even interpret for future wells I wanted to drill. So yeah, data is very, very important. In any project you're doing, whether it's waterfall or agile, as a case with you, data is very, very, very important. I'm also when we did I'm working on a tech project now, right? We did an Afrigo integration at some point, and it was a lot, but we kept the data. Now we're trying to integrate with them, and it's quite easier. It's easier compared to the last one because we already know, okay, what are the endpoints we're expecting for Africa. We knew we needed endpoints for activating card, block card, freeze, unfreeze, relink, update, different things. Right? By the time we came to them, then we did not know. We're just anything you give to us, people now figure out, oh, we need this one. Oh, they say it's in page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go and check the page. But now in the integration with InterSwitch, it's very easy. We're like, we need 1, 2, 3, 4. We're talking like, because we have data, you know, yeah, it helps you. It helps your performance. It helps information. And this performance information reports are also very, very important. You also need data to report, right, to your stakeholders and say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is where we are, these are the successes we've achieved so far, as the case may be, right? So data can come from during your planning phase, during your execution phase, during your control phase, during different phases, right? So that's what this is talking about. So your work performance data is simply raw data. Um, it is the status of the work that was being done, but does not have any analysis applied to it. It is not useful by itself, usually outputs of executing process. So what performance data could be, today we came to the office, we wrote more like stand-up reports, like yesterday I worked on this, today I'm going to be working on this, this is my blockers. Nothing really, but it's just work performance. Shows that okay, we are moving this of the arm and all that. Then information is now when you are able to take that data and make it useful, right? Um, as you monitor and control, you are able to create useful data that becomes information. And then report is just um, tells you the stage where you are in the project, overall status report of the actual project. All the data you worked on or provided all together, you put them together, and then you create your report. Then another keyword is tailoring, where you're trying to select the appropriate project management process, input tools, techniques, output, and life cycle to manage the project. So it's not all projects, like I explained, that you can do predictive. It's not all projects that you can do agile or iterative and incremental. It's not all projects, it won't work, right? So tailoring just talks about you need your unique, what you're looking at your project and you're looking at what unique process or inputs or tools or techniques do I need. Now, if you're building a house, you are talking about Gantt charts or all those things. But um, when you're doing tech, you're talking more user stories. The tools are more around ClickUp. The tools are more maybe Notion. The tools are maybe Jira and all that. So it's a bit different. So you need to make sure that that's what tailoring is basically talking about. Making sure that you're using the right processes, input tools, techniques, outputs, and life cycle to manage the project based on the project. Okay, so I think I've spoken a lot. I'm going to take you to a quick break, but I want to confirm if we have any questions from the first module. Do we have questions? Just take a quick break, then we'll come back. Any questions from anyone?